Before today's episode of the Brand Archive, an urgent news bulletin. An unfortunate series of events led to a small fire at the Good Kids Studios. A paperboy errantly discarded a lit cigarette into the wastebasket next to this episode's footage, causing the reels to go up in flames. No footage made it out of the tragedy. Our condolences to those who enjoy the video podcast. I'm happy to report the boy escaped with only minor facial scarring. In other news, construction began on the new asbestos processing plant above the Good Kids Studios. Listeners may notice the sounds of industry in the background of today's episode. Now, back to our regularly scheduled programming.
Welcome to the Brand Archive, a podcast by the Good Kids where we dive into nostalgic brands, find out what went well, what didn't go so well, and what we can learn from it along the way. I'm Ben.
And I'm Ashton.
Today's brand file is something we can really sink our teeth into. We're talking Wrigley's Gum.
Sweet. Well, I'm excited to talk about this one because the nostalgia for me is big.
Okay.
And it's because...
Yeah, why is the nostalgia for gum so big?
Because, you know, as like a little kid, and maybe this is just me, but like your grandparents just love to spoil you, right?
Okay.
So anytime I saw my grandparents growing up, my grandma would always treat us to something and my grandpa would always give us something.
Really?
Yes. And so my grandma...
How do you get grandparents like this?
They're awesome. What can I say? But my grandma, on like multiple occasions, would always offer me Wrigley's gum. And it was always the spearmint.
Okay.
But my grandpa, whenever we would leave, he'd always give us a little Snickers bar.
For real? Like they had this planned out?
Just was something we could always count on as a kid.
Do you think that your grandparents had like a meeting where they're like, okay, you get to give the gum at the beginning, and then when they leave, I'm going to do this?
I think it's just stuff they personally enjoyed, and so they offered it to us,
That is so funny.
But like in the car, at church, waiting around, shopping, my grandma just would always offer me gum.
So it's spearmint.
Spearmint, yeah.
And did you know that it was Wrigley's?
I mean, as a kid, I didn't really pay attention to that.
Yeah.
As I got older, you recognize the brand.
Sure.
But more so probably tied to the brand of like spearmint and juicy fruit and stuff. Because I do think occasionally she would have juicy fruit.
Okay.
Which kind of like bled into my purchasing decisions once I started having enough money from chores or allowance or whatever.
Yeah, you'd always get the grandma's gum.
Well, I think I would purchase either juicy fruit.
Yeah.
Or, do you remember, like, the zebra gum?
Oh, yeah.
Where you get, like, tattoos or whatever?
What?
I think it was, like, a tattoo or something. Or,
Yes.
Yeah. So those were the two gums that I purchased as a kid.
Good choices. Yeah. I was going to ask you, and maybe zebra gum is kind of the answer there, but I was going to ask you, like, what gum do you remember? I feel like the 90s, 80s, 90s was this like silver age of gum where we had some weird choices for gum. We had, you think about the golden age of gum and we have like sticks of gum.
Sure.
But now when we were children, I feel like we had all sorts of like different types of gum, and I guess zebra gum is one of those options where it came with tattoos and the flavor lasted 2 seconds, right? Mm-hmm. Do you have any other ones that or a zebra gum that one for you that's childhood gum?
Besides the zebra gum, I think it was also the pink gum that you got in a circle. Yes. And it was like known for being like the biggest bubbles. Was it bubble? Wait, not bubblicious.
Do you mean the tape?
The tape.
Bubble tape.
Okay, I was like, I don't know what it's called, but I can distinctly remember the tape and just eating it on the tape and saying how much you could fit in your mouth and the whole 9 yards.
I remember my sister, we would go get bubble tape at the gas station. And I remember her trying to not use it like tape, but take the whole thing and just bite into it like it's a cake. I remember her doing that, and oh my gosh. Like, she was laughing so hard because she was trying to chew it, and it could, it was just so much gum. I was remembering a few from my childhood, and we were a Trident family.
Oh,
I feel like I'm always the contrarian of
sure.
Right? So we were a Trident family, and we always had, my mom always had the cinnamon Trident gum.
Yeah, cinnamon was popular.
Yeah, so I really liked the cinnamon because of that. Mm-hmm. But besides that, the things that I was gravitating toward was, I don't know if you would, I mean, it was I think it was marketed towards boys, but it was ectoplasm, it was called, and it was gum in a tube, and you could like squirt liquid? It out like toothpaste, and it was gum. Yeah, I would have that while my mom played softball.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, just thinking about it is kind of disgusting, if I'm being honest. And then, this one you might know about. Do you remember they had gum in a metal box, and it was called Ouch? And it was like basically
like Band-Aids. Yeah, that was fun.
I really liked that one because then the box, and I do the same thing with Altoid tins now. I try to figure out, what could I use this box for now?
Yeah.
So that was, I always had one of those Ouch tins in my toy box full of stuff. Who knows what it was, but...
That's fun.
So let's talk a little about the history of Wrigley's.
Yeah, they started in 1891 with William Wrigley Jr. And interestingly enough, he was selling soap, was kind of the first thing that he started doing, and I believe it was his father's soap.
That's what I understood too, was that his father had a soap company, and then he moved to Chicago or somewhere around in Illinois to start selling the soap.
Yeah, and then he had like kind of baking soda or baking powder, like on the side, but then that became more popular than the soap. So then he started selling baking powder. But then when he sold baking powder, he had this like free promotional item, and it was chewing gum.
Yeah, so he basically used it, like a marketing tool, and it kind of feels like a lead magnet.
For sure.
He would use it to just advertise these products, which is, it almost seems like, how do you even think to do, like, it doesn't even correlate, soap and gum,
I know,
they're not the same
random
thing. So it was kind of, I don't know if it was innovative. I looked it up, and other people were doing this as well. Pharmacists were using it as a way to... they were using it as lead magnet to they were selling it as like a digestive tool.
Interesting.
Yeah, to help with digestion. And then people know more about this is Topps trading cards would put gum in the cards as like an added bonus. So you're selling the cards, and it comes with gum. So that's the added bonus.
Nice.
I did a little bit more research on one of my favorite gum brands that I thought was the same situation. I thought it was gum selling comics. Have you ever heard of Bazooka gum?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so Bazooka gum comes wrapped in a comic.
Oh, sure.
And I guess that was the flip idea, where the comic was the lead magnet and the gum was the product. So people were using gum in this way, and it wasn't really a sellable item at this time. It wasn't valuable enough to people for it to be bought.
Yeah, interesting. And obviously it became really popular. It wasn't just a freebie item anymore, because 2 years later they launched Juicy Fruit Gum, which I was actually
That's
surprised.
your favorite.
Yeah, I know. And I always thought spearmint came first. So I was really surprised that Juicy Fruit was kind of the OG brand behind, I guess I should say, original flavor behind the gum. But spearmint came a year later in 94. And obviously that's one of the flagship products, because that's what I have nostalgia for.
Yeah, and it actually was surprising to me too, because the Juicy Fruit feels like something that would have been put out in the 80s or the 90s. Like, for some reason, Juicy Fruit feels much more like a brand that came to fruition later on, whereas Spearmint feels old.
Yeah, it feels more classic, I think.
Yeah, so I was pretty surprised as well.
Yeah, maybe they thought they needed something new and snazzy to come out with. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then 20 years go by before we have Double Mint gum. And they marketed that as double the flavor. And I actually saw some, campaigns and ads from them back in the day. And it was always like, flavor that lasts. So it seems like there was this false perception maybe from other gums that the flavor didn't last. And so that's kind of why they kept pushing this idea of like, oh, all the flavor.
Right. Like zebra gum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe not to that extent, but...
I don't remember for sure, but do you remember the commercials for Double Mint where they would have twins?
Yes, I always loved those. I thought those were very... Yeah, I thought they were clever.
Yeah, that's funny.
And then Wrigley, he was kind of known to be this innovative marketer back in the day because by 1915, they were one of the most recognizable brands on a national basis.
Okay.
And this was before, like, there really was a brand for gum. Like, he was the first to create a brand, not just a gum product. And so part of the ways that he did that, some of the new ideas at the time were that he would send free samples to everybody in the phone book. And so that was like the first ever direct marketing campaign out there.
Again, what a weird idea. Like, I couldn't imagine somebody doing that today.
I know, putting some sticks of gum in an envelope, seeing it in your postcard.
Yeah, here you go. It's like, oh, it's funny because I'm assuming that the gum wasn't wrapped in a wrapper that is like you peel it, like you tear it open, right? I'm sure it was just like a folded sheet of paper with a piece of gum. Like you can imagine the wrapper that's in the box.
Yeah.
That he just put it in an envelope.
Seems a little fishy to me, but it must have worked.
Right.
And then he also was one of the first people to start what we now know as like an impulse buy because he would put gum by cash registers. Right. Because they were, this cheap kind of quick toss it in type thing. And I just think that's brilliant because it's, those two tactics are still things that people use today.
I wonder how he walked into a store and said, you should put these right here.
I know. Did he have to
sell the idea, or
maybe he did it? He had to sell the idea once, and then everybody else had to follow because it was taking off so well, or something.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if the salespeople were like, "Oh, that's a good idea," or if he had to fight for the idea at all.
In the 1920s, that's when they expanded internationally, including Europe and Asia. And at this point, they definitely were America's top gum brand, and he had become a millionaire countless times over at this point, but we obviously know that that's also when the Great Depression hit, and instead of saying this is hard times, we're gonna pause or delay, he famously continued to market, and obviously he had the cash flow because of what he had earned to do that in that time. But he said stopping would be like stopping your watch to save time. Yeah,
and things like that I think are probably easy to sell in tough times because it is a cheaper thing that you can do. It's cheaper than cigarettes, right? So, so it probably was a good move to just keep pushing through the Depression. Giving people a little bit of happiness.
Yeah, a little bit of joy.
That they can look forward to.
Yeah, and then you probably know this already, but we have Wrigley Field in Chicago. So that's when in 1921 he bought the Cubs.
Yeah.
And that's obviously why it's named Wrigley Field. So that's kind of a cool callback.
How do you go from selling sticks of gum? Imagine how many sticks of gum
to buying the Cubs
to sell to buy a sports team, a pro sports team.
Yeah, I have no idea. Too many would be my guess.
So many, but good for him. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was called Weegham Park or Cubs Park, and because he wanted to cross promote pretty much. He named the stadium Wrigley Field, which also started the idea of mashing gum with baseball, because I have always thought of chewing gum as a baseball thing, and this was the start of that idea. Another big reason why I think baseball with gum is, if you've ever heard of Big League Chew, which is a gum that is like shredded. It looks like shredded tobacco. Oh my gosh. Talk about marketing tobacco to kids. Really cool, by the way. Really cool. But also kind of dangerous.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think it's smart, right? To make that connection with the baseball and the gum. And I think at the time it was definitely infused into the experience at the field. He unfortunately passes away in 1932, but that's when he passes it on to his son. And that's also when, by the 30s, it was a household staple. Everybody knows Wrigley's gum. So, and then in the 40s to 50s, and again, this is just like a kind of a clever marketing tactic, but the gum was included in military rations. And so that's kind of what also solidified the global brand awareness of Wrigley's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so during the 30s, he kept pushing, and then when he saw war coming, the early 1900s was very difficult for businesses. And so getting a government contract was a huge deal.
Yes.
Companies that got government contracts thrived, for obvious reasons. But yeah, so he set out to lobbying to the government that it reduced nervousness and improved concentration.
I see. 50s to 70s, almost 80s, Wrigley continues to be just the dominant force in the gum market, with more than 50% of the market owned by them. And then in 74, they launched Freedent, which was the first gum that doesn't stick to dental work.
What does that mean?
That's innovative.
Like, what is dental? Is that like dentures?
Yeah, well, or braces.
Oh, okay.
Because if kids are chewing them, right?
Yeah.
Think about the kid playing baseball who has braces. He's like, oh, I can't chew bubble gum and be a cool kid.
Interesting.
Yeah, at least that's my impression of it. But...
yeah, that makes sense.
And then with the times, in the 80s, things were becoming a little bit more health conscious. And so they introduced Extra, which was Wrigley's first sugar-free gum.
While doing the research for this brand, this is the first time I realized that gum might not be healthy. I didn't know. I didn't know that it was like an unhealthy thing to do.
Relative to most choices, I think it's probably just fine.
Yeah.
But, everyone, when people are counting calories and, every little thing matters.
Sure.
Then...
But isn't it like 10 calories?
I don't even know, to be honest.
Just do a few push-ups.
Yeah, do one push-up to earn your stick of gum for the day.
I did look, so the Good Kids has gum, and I went to do my research this morning. We have Extra gum, and it tastes good, but I didn't notice a difference. It's the sugar-free, it's Extra, so it's sugar-free, but I didn't taste the difference between that and sugar gum, so
maybe
why even
hack.
have the sugar?
Yeah, life hack.
Life hack.
By 97, they became the first gum company to top $1 billion in sales.
And
crazy.
When I was looking into it, I was like, oh, I wonder what that is in today's money.
Yeah.
This wasn't that long ago, so it was only $2 billion, Yeah, that's still a lot.
Yeah.
But I was like, I bet it's $20 billion. Inflation isn't that fast.
Nah, it feels fast right now, but... and then in 2005, they actually made one of their first acquisitions, I believe, where they purchased Lifesavers and Altoids from Kraft Foods. I would have never thought Kraft Foods owned those, but And so they really diversified. And I think they started to do that because at the time, like the gum market industry as a whole was starting to decline. And so I think they were starting to realize, oh, we're going to have to invest in other small treats they can put in your mouth, right?
Yep.
By buying these. And at the same time, competition was growing because we have Trident and Orbit, the gum that you were raised on. And then even just like snacks and mints were becoming more popular too. So you just have this kind of like full storm of these other products coming on and competition, and gum's just not in their heyday anymore.
Yeah.
So.
One of the one interesting thing that I think really lended itself to the decline in the 2000s was the idea that we were shopping online. And gum
it's a cash register impulse buy.
It is an impulse buy. Like you see it there and you're like, oh yeah, I do need gum tonight, right? It's almost always an impulse buy, or you have to buy it in like a case of multiple packs just to order it online.
Yeah.
So I think there was a huge impact, just the fact that we're not impulse buying gum anymore. And I don't know how you would ever bring that back, like in Amazon, have a little pop-up. Are you sure you don't want gum? Because you're gonna say no to that because you can't have it right away.
Or make it a free item that's tossed in if you hit $30 or something to try to get people hooked on gum again.
Yeah. But I mean, part of the appeal of the impulse buy is that you can use it right away.
Yeah,
and so maybe that'll come back with quicker delivery speeds. I don't know. But
Amazon starts throwing it on their delivery boxes.
Yeah, they'll just put a couple of slices of gum on there for free.
Yeah. But really, like, all of that kind of unraveled into an acquisition or a purchase of Mars acquiring Wrigley Company, and they did buy them for $23 billion. So it was quite the sale. In general, though, in 2011, as far as gum industry is concerned, they hit $25 billion in that market in 2011. So that is kind of the peak of gum sales, which I graduated high school in 2011, and gum was definitely a popular thing. Like
it was.
Oh yeah, you were, I don't know, not cool, but like, everyone wanted a piece of gum if you had a pack.
Yeah. So how many times have you put a piece of gum on the bottom side of your desk?
I never did that. I thought it was gross and icky. Ooh. I don't even like spitting it. I always put my gum in the wrapper.
Yeah.
And then toss it. Like, I don't like touching the gum. Yeah. So the fact that people touched it and then touched it again to stick it underneath there.
And the fact that you accidentally touch it once is so gross. Like if you the fact that it's there is super gross.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever done that, but I remember at a movie theater, I tried to lift my chair up one time, and you felt like, oh, so gross, so bad.
So I was curious about, what does the future look like? Because technically, Wrigley's is owned by Mars, so in some sense you could say the company is over, but the brand continues because you can still buy Juicy Fruit and all of these gums today. But I was curious about the gum industry as a whole because they hit their peak in 2011, and so the prediction for this year is 19.7 billion, and so it is a little bit of a decline from the 25 billion in 2011, but it's better than recent years because it definitely took a kind of a harsh decline. So it seems like gum is kind of just slowly on the up and up. But I guess we'll see. Maybe there needs to be a new gum brand out there that just takes the market by storm. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of people who are using gum to work out their jaw muscles. I don't know the science behind that, but I know that that's like a trend that happened within the last few years of people. You know how they have like those jaw things that you like put this thing in your mouth and you chew? No?
I haven't done that,
Maybe
no. But is it to work out the muscle?
Yeah. And I highly doubt that gum is a great way to work out your jaw muscle, but
it's better than nothing, I suppose.
I think people are into that. So maybe that's where it comes back.
Go. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exercise.
That's in today.
Just hard breathing.
You burn the 10 calories that the stick of gum.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to talk about the name and the slogan from a brand perspective, because clearly, William Wrigley Jr. is the founder of the company, and that's the name of the company. It seems like that was what you did in the early 1900s when you started a company. Like, there was no emotional naming, right, that you have today. It was more so about the founder.
I think it was about trust. And True. If you were willing to put your name on it, that means that you're actually, there's some bit of risk there for you. So you want the product to be good as the owner if your name is on it.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I was going to say that I'm very in love with all of the gum flavor brands. I guess it's maybe all of the sub brands technically. But we look at Juicy Fruit, Spearmint, Double Mint, Freedom, Big Red, Hubba Bubba. Those names are super memorable. They're descriptive of the product. They're fun. So even though the umbrella company, which is Wrigley's, thankfully he at least minimized it to just Wrigley's.
Yeah.
We have all of these kind of fun brands within it, and honestly, I think some of those are almost more well-known or recognizable than Wrigley's as a whole, because they are that way.
Yeah. What's interesting to me is how many mint flavors there are.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was a little younger, I did a test to see which mint flavor I liked the most. Do you know the difference between them?
No.
I don't really either, but I do remember Spearmint was better for me than Winter Fresh.
Interesting.
Yeah, I very much preferred Spearmint over Winter Fresh. I don't know why that is. I'll have to do the test again, but yeah. Now seems like a good time for a word from our sponsor, the communication specialist.
This is a message from our sponsor, Professional Communications Specialist.
I heard somewhere down the line that she works for peanuts.
So should we talk about the logo?
Yeah.
So we looked back at this and we couldn't find the original designer of the first ever Wrigley's logo.
I honestly, did you find any of the designers? Because I wasn't able to find any of the designers who worked on it.
No, I mean the biggest change was in 2008, of course. But for the most part, up until that point when it was Wrigley's ownership and before that acquisition with Mars, even though there's like subtle changes, for the most part it was the same. It's all caps, it's red, they changed the tracking on the letters a little bit. Sometimes it's a little bolder than others, but I mean, it's that, and then like specifically on the Spearmint, it was always that arrow.
Yeah, it's so funny because it's almost like there's no rhyme or reason to why they changed the logo throughout the last 100 years. There's just, like you said, minimal changes that really don't add to it. But I will say that I think they had something with the 1975 one where it's really tracked out. And the only reason I'm thinking this is because it would look good on a pack of gum. Like when you have that long rectangle, it seems to cover that space really nice, but there's really, it doesn't feel like they were making important choices when they were making the logo.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't seem like they were trying to use the logo to their best effort, right? It was mainly just a name for them. And usually having such a horizontal long logo can cause issues, but because gum is literally a long horizontal stick of gum, didn't create a problem for them.
No.
But the one thing that I was surprised at was their mascot. This idea of...
Again, it's like, why?
It's this like, and they must have started using it early 1900s because I saw lots of advertisements with it, but it's a spearman, and it's basically a green guy with like an arrow top to his head / hat. And he's shown doing a variety of things. I saw him riding a stick of gum. I saw him juggling sticks of gum.
Just makes no sense.
Yeah, I know. There's graphic of him popping out of a box and he has a stick of gum in his hand, but honestly to me it looks like a cigarette.
Oh.
Like I was so confused when I first saw it. So I think it was their way of like relating to maybe all audiences in the 1900s, but it seems very random to me. And I don't know when they stopped using him, but I have not seen anything recently
yeah.
with the mascot.
Yeah, and I mean, it derives from the spearmint logo, which is the word spearmint inside of a green arrow. But I was even looking up why do they have an arrow? Like, I was like, is that progress? Is that, what is the arrow? I couldn't find any information. It's kind of, I always looked at that arrow as this is where you tear the package to get the gum out. That's what I always thought it was.
Yeah.
But it's actually the logo. And it's so it's interesting. They call this mascot Spearmen, which I think, honestly, it just seems like it was just like a dad who like was like laughing at his own jokes the whole time and coming up with this world that nobody understood. That's kind of how I understand it, but I'm sure there's a history out there somewhere, but I didn't find it. But yeah, I think that this arrow could have been fun if they simplified it drastically. Because the face on this arrow is like a porcelain doll face. Like, it's weird. It's creepy, and I think this is how mascots were done in the 1910s. But it's creepy, it's weird. I think they could have really simplified this and made something interesting.
Yeah, I'm glad it's not currently in use.
What do you think about, so in 2008, they redesigned Wrigley when they brought Wrigley into Mars.
Yep.
So some big things changed. They softened all of the corners, well, most of the corners on the lettering. They tightened it up, they thinned the letters out, and they turned it blue.
And they got rid of the apostrophe S.
This is the first time it was blue in its entire history. Again, I was looking around for why, but I didn't find any answers.
And without any answers, I have to be honest, to me it's pretty horrifying.
Yeah, it's just like...
Sorry.
It's really, it took all the personality out of what it was, which...
It's not recognizable.
Right.
Yeah, there's no heritage, no nostalgia. I will say that on the packaging, like on the examples of Juicy Fruit and Spearmint today, it's still in red.
Yeah.
So at least there's that, because like I said, it was red its entire life. So even the choice to choose blue just seems so random to me.
Yeah.
But they do use it in red on the packaging. So there is that. And on the packaging, it's still Wrigley's apostrophe S.
Yeah.
So to me, it kind of seems like they did this brand refresh, but then maybe they got scared and then just didn't use it.
I don't know. I mean, I would assume Mars is the size of company that knows what they're doing. So I'm sure there is a reason for it. Yeah. I will say that the one thing that I find interesting about this rebrand is that in 2002 they added an apostrophe, which is an arrow which ties to spearmint, that's nice that they did that. With this one, they actually turned the G into the arrow, and it's super subtle. I'm sure that it is intentional, but nobody... I mean, if you're not looking for it, it's hard to see. But, yeah, so I'm sure there was thought toward it.
That's such a nice way of saying it, Ben.
What?
That's such a nice way of saying it.
Well, yeah, always the benefit of the doubt,
I also wanted to just speak to kind of the competition and the differentiator because when you look at all the gums today, especially because they're owned by Mars, most of the gums out there are owned by the same umbrella company. But I think that every flavor or sub-brand of gum definitely does a good job of owning its unique identity, right? Like where Juicy Fruit's more bubbly and yellow and bright. Whereas, Double Mint is the classic green and looks a little bit more vintage. So I think, I don't know if the umbrella brand matters as much as long as those ones remain, which is cool. But I do think the difference primarily between today and 100 years ago is that we have so much more competition to gum, right? So you're not just competing with gum, which is direct competition. You're competing with candies and suckers and airheads and mints and all these other things that are your indirect competition. So that to me is why primarily the gum industry as a whole is just not as strong as it once was.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump into some takeaways. One thing while I was looking into this was, I guess the biggest takeaway I took from looking into Wrigley's is that your lead magnet should be valuable enough to sell. Mm-hmm. And so obviously he started with this lead magnet, which is his gum, and he says, if you buy my soap, I'll give you the gum for free. And then it ends up, who cares about the soap? And he's just selling the gum, which is profound and interesting. And I guess one example for what we do is when we were early on making logos, Ashton and I knew that strategy was super important to a logo. You had to know what you were doing, why you were doing it. And so we would throw in the strategy for free, which ended up being hours and hours of work. And it was so important to what we believed the logo should be that we needed it to be there. So we would just do it. And we found that people really loved it. And would just be interested in more services in that arena. So we ended up starting to use that as a product, which is super exciting. So now our lead magnet is more along the lines of a free consult, which I believe could be extremely valuable. So if you've made it this far in the podcast, please contact us for a free consult on your idea. Let us know what you're thinking, because we are all about that.
Yeah, and it's just a good coaching session. It's super approachable. Whatever ideas on your mind, like, let's talk through it. Let's think through it. You know, how can we optimize it or make it even more efficient for you? So I love doing those. And I also think of our newspaper that we did.
Yes.
Way early on. That was just a for fun lead magnet because we were passionate about it. But it was in line with our brand story, for one. And it was really interesting and really engaging. And we could we could offer newspaper design as a service. We don't, obviously, because of cultural context.
Yeah.
But I think the point is that your lead magnet is one of your first impressions. So you don't want to just toss in something that's, half-assed or just, kind of a cheap thing that you can just quickly get out there. But you do want to think about it with intentionality. Of course, cost is still a factor, but think about something valuable that you can give that really kind of speaks for itself without you in the room.
Yeah, and I would add that you really want to give them a piece of what it's like to work with you or what it's like to buy from you. Let them see what the quality is like working with you. I think that's important.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing that I learned from this whole Wrigley's journey is just how there is a fine balance between focus and depth. And because I'm a huge fan of niching, I really am, because it creates a focused target audience. It gives you clarity around what you should create, what you should talk about, how to help those people specifically. But when culture shifts, just like, gum was no longer the only impulse buy, you have to also think about depth, and you have to think about how can I extend this product line to survive, right? And still make it top tier. But I just think there's seasons of focus and depth, and you kind of have to have an understanding of the cultural context to make sure you do it appropriately.
Right. Yeah. So we have one last section here. Ashton, you want to lead the audience question?
Yes. So we were asked, does Wrigley Fields still promote Wrigley's gum in any way? Because, it's its namesake, essentially. Right. And unfortunately, they do not. I was super bummed by this, but currently, and it is owned by Mars, I understand. But still, to me, gum is still an association with baseball, I think, or it could be. It's low-hanging fruit in my mind, but there is currently no signage or giveaways or campaigns tied to gum, and I just think that's an opportunity missed.
It's a super, missed opportunity for sure. Just the cross-promotion for it is important, even with the nostalgia of it pulling people in. I think,
Yeah.
It would be a good idea. Well, that's what we have on Wrigley's. Tune in next week as we open the archive on a picture-perfect brand. We're talking Polaroid.
If you'd like to hear more from the podcast, be sure to follow and subscribe before you go, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.